Why?
Oh, I know, but you said you got
About.
better than I am.
Well, we only have 10 minutes each, so.
I know.
There we go.
Alrighty, if everyone's ready to hear from two of our best phone banking leaders, I'd love to get started. I'll give everyone a minute to get settled. Very excited to see you all after 3 years of working with you and just seeing you on Zoom, especially all of our very dedicated phone bankers that make a huge difference in these elections. I am honored to be here with Linda Noland and Laura Durkin, two of our fabulous phone bank leaders that not only run some of the best phone banks in our systems, but some of the best phone banks in the country, if I do say so myself. So very excited to be sharing all of our phone banking successes and their best practices with y'all. Just some fast facts, as if they aren't already ingrained in your brain enough. Our phone banking programs are amazing, but also very effective. We made this past cycle 430 dials across our 18 fully endorsed candidates. Volunteer phone bank teams made 280,000 of those, so just over 2/3. And you can see here some of our fast facts. Their work is just incredible. But I am actually going to let our fabulous phone bankers take it away, starting with Laura Durkin from our Greater Chicago team.
Hi, everyone. So when my co-lead Laura Zupko and I started brainstorming about how we were going to recruit volunteers to phone bank with us, we started it in April of 2022, and we decided we needed to be really thoughtful and prescriptive about how we were going to do our recruitment. There was a lot at stake, as everybody knows, and we wanted to make sure we reached the best number of volunteers we could, because we knew that the more volunteers we got, that would mean the more dials for our candidates, which would mean potentially more voters getting out there. So when we sat down and we talked about it, we decided on two really specific things. We decided we were going to have a cadence of recruitment, and we were going to have a cadence of phone bank email or phone bank communication with our phone bank community. This is just a little bit about how we thought about. We thought of our phone bank on a spectrum. We didn't think about our recruitment as being, we're just going to do it in May. We decided we would do a recruitment every single month, that the recruitment was going to have a theme to it, and that we were going to have an email developed that we could send to every contact we reached out to, and we were going to have that developed before we even started our recruitment efforts. So we also knew we had to be flexible, because the political spectrum is flexible, because things would happen with our candidates. So this is how it actually ended up being around the themes. We knew we were going to do a GOTV recruitment, and we knew we would do something around 100 days to voting time. But we weren't really sure how we were going to frame the other ones before we started. Next. So we really started our recruitment efforts in May with an eye on a June 1 phone bank kickoff. We used our Greater Chicago sister district list from Action Network, and we pulled out 203 names that had a phone bank tag. We started recruiting from that list. We were also really lucky because our Greater Chicago leadership team decided they would do their very first all-volunteer call of the season around phone banking. And so we had Neil Morgan present on that call, and we took those names also and added them to the list and recruited for them. So we also in May solidified our training. We wanted the training to be supportive of what the leadership in the organizational leadership had put together for training. And we wanted to make sure that we incorporated that. And so we practiced and refined our presentation on that. Additionally, we tried to group our recruitment calls close to an event. So if the Greater Chicago leadership team was having someone speak, or if we were having one of our candidates on the call, we tried to group our phone efforts, our recruitment efforts, to recruit more volunteers around those events. So we had a theme, maybe it was 100 days till you were going to have till the election, but we would also say, and we're going to have, candidate A speaking in a couple weeks. So why don't you join us? We ended up working for 4 candidates through the election cycle, which was a lot, but it also gave us a lot of opportunity to invite people to hear a special speaker. And we had more people show up for those when they were talking on our phone bank, because people were anxious to hear what the candidates said. Next. We also knew that we wanted to have a special phone bank communication. And we had it laid out that it would, every email we developed, and then subsequently every social media posting that our great Carrie, our social media person, did, had the same kind of format. And what we wanted people to understand was that they wanted people to know they could expect to get the same kind of information every time they opened an email. Now, it wasn't the same information, but they knew that they would, if they were getting our Friday phone bank email report, they knew that they would find out something that was important politically for that week. They knew they would find out where we stood in terms of our phone bank goals, because we do a here we are this week, here we are year to date. And they also knew we do some shout outs to successes that had been happening on the phone banks. We could have had, somebody make a whole bunch of calls. We had a father and daughter team join the phone bank one time. And we had, we tried to capture information that that people heard from voters. Like, oh, who are you calling about? Are they a Democrat? Well, then if they're a Democrat, I'm voting. I don't even have to know anything about them. Stuff like that would have the reader know that you could actually have impactful conversations with people. So we also had a Tuesday welcome email that would go out. This went out to everyone who was a new phone banker. This was the first time they had signed up. So they were either new to phone banking with Sister District, or they hadn't phone banked with us in a long time. So we would send them an email welcoming them to the call on Wednesday, and then giving them links to things that they might want to read up on before the call. So we'd give them a link to the candidate one pager. We'd give them a link to Sister District page on them. We'd give them a link to the candidates page. And we'd also give them a link to instructions on how to sign up for Action Network. And this really reduced the amount of time they needed to get up to speed. Also during our Zoom calls, we used the Zoom chat function religiously. We would be asking people how they're doing. We would be, talking about calls that had just happened. We would ask questions. We wanted our phone bank community to understand that they didn't have to be afraid of not knowing something. So Laura and I would sometimes, sort of put something out there that we knew the answer to, but we wanted to get the conversation growing. And it ended up being used extensively. And that's where we got a lot of the quotes that we would put in the emails we'd send out on Friday, because people felt like they were part of a community. In Greater Chicago, it could take me an hour to drive to where some of our volunteer phone bankers were. So we were really focused on, in a place that's this big, how can we create a sense of community with people who are mostly going to be on Zoom? And so our email communication, our Zoom conversations, our social media efforts were all focused around engaging with volunteers, getting volunteers to feel comfortable, and then also with encouraging others to join us in Phonebank. And that's about it I'm talking about.
Awesome. Well, now I'm going to turn it over to the phone nominal,
Yes.
Linda Noland from Sacramento.
There we go. Is it on now? Oh, well, it's nice to see all of you. It's kind of fun to put some names and faces together, and I appreciate your coming to listen to us talk about phone banking. When I took on this task with Sister District in 2020, I knew nothing about phone banking. But I did know a little bit about groups, and I did know a little bit about volunteers. And so my initial focus was that in order to have a successful group, in order to have a successful phone bank, I needed to meet the needs of the volunteers. And those needs come out when you're trying to recruit. I don't know enough about the candidate to be able to talk to them. Or talk about them. I don't know enough about the elections in Michigan or North Carolina or Pennsylvania. I don't know enough about my computer. Many of our folks are elderly, or not elderly, but they're older. They were past the time when, or before the time when all the computers came out. And so they didn't know about browsers or how to put a link into a browser, how to paste and cut, how to split their screens. It was interesting to me. So it's like, okay, then this is what we need to pay attention to. The other issue besides the technology was they wanted to know what happens when I can't answer somebody's question when I'm talking about it, i.e. who's there to support me. So this is was our focus from the very beginning. We provided lots of information about the candidate, the elections, what was going on in our candidate state. We provided a lot, excuse me, a lot of training around the technology as it came up during the meetings, excuse me. And we also looked at, assured people that there were enough of us around who had maybe a little bit of experience as our group grew, that we could support whatever issue came up for our callers. So doing that, and over time, having myself and my co-leader who runs our Saturday phone bank, and our group becoming more experienced, we all sort of surrounded each other with information and support and permission to not to have kind of crummy days where they felt like they didn't quite answer the question correctly, or they didn't quite navigate the phone bank correctly, or they got all kind of mixed up with, how do I get into the phone bank? And I've now just taken myself out of Zoom. So those things happen, and we gave each other permission, and folks began to trust one another, and they became more open in terms of asking questions and providing information themselves. And the group just gelled. And so the first year that we started, we had no goals. We did not have any idea what a good goal would even be. So in about the first part of July, I think, of that year, which would have been 2020, we hit 5,000 dials, and it was like, oh my gosh, we are just wonderful. Look what we've done. And so we decided that we needed to provide a name. So have a name for our group. So that's where the phone nominals came about. But since that time, we have also brought in a theme song that's kind of a jazzy number that takes us all out and when we start to make calls. And we've also started a tradition of what I call fourth grade jokes, because I think people need to have a smile on their face, and they need to be kind of relaxed when they start calling. So a fourth grade joke is something like, what do you call a bear that has no teeth? A gummy bear. Why did the man call his canines Rolex and Timex? They were his watchdogs. So it's that kind of goofy jokes that we've now instituted, and it's become kind of a tradition, and it has created an identity as a group. So people do not feel like they are just sort of a lone person coming in to make a couple of calls, but that they are actually part of a group that makes a bunch of calls, that supports our candidates and supports Sister District. Okay. So here we are. So this was the phenomenals. This is our structure is such that we have a 2-hour phone bank on Saturday mornings. And we started that because we knew that some people could not come during the week. So, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to be able to participate in the mission. But our primary phone bank is on Wednesdays. It's from 2:30 until 5 o'clock. So it's a 2.5-hour phone bank, and it's 90 minutes of calling, bracketed by a half an hour on each end. The first half hour we share information. I'm able to give people information that Sister District passes on to me, about the phases of the phone banking. Just new information about what candidates are saying, what's happening in the states, just that kind of general information, as well as kind of what our chapter is doing. So that has been a very successful model for us because it supported the coalition or cohesiveness of the group, because we had a chance to get to know each other, and the group became very involved in decision making. So we decided as a group, did we want to try to get the candidate to come in? Do we want someone to come in and do a little bit of training? Neil came in last year and did a training for us on when we started the voter plan, part of the cycle. We've had campaign managers come in and talk with us a little bit about how the campaign is going. So the group kind of, again, tells us what their needs are, and we try to accommodate them. And so they feel like they are a part of a group. Our previous speaker talked about belonging. That's where the belonging comes in. That belonging brings with it a sense of commitment. So people show up more often. It brings in a sense of obligation to each other, that if these folks are coming, I need to come as well, so we can continue to support our mission. So what I did know about groups and about volunteers is that they needed to have something really concrete to hang their hat on. It's one thing to read in an email, oh, we've reached this number of phone or of dials or undecideds that we found, or volunteers, that sort of thing. But this wall and these posters sit behind me in the Zoom meeting. So our callers see this every single week. So we've had the thermometer for 2 years. And then last year I decided I would just try to do something a little bit different, just to sort of shake things up a bit. So we did the dialing for Darren and racing for Rachel. It was not as successful because it was a little harder to see from week to week, because you had to get to 3,000 calls before you went to the next dial circle. So I probably won't do that again. We'll probably go back to the thermometer. The other thing that was really important to our group was that one of my points of selling them on coming into the group was that we were cleaning up the list. That we were eliminating those numbers that were not viable. So we created a category ourselves called non-viable numbers, and people needed to know how we did with that. That's what the scrubbed little blue poster is. So that particular year, which was 2 years ago, we took off 2,000 names out of, or not names, but numbers out of the voter list. And last year we did over 3,000. And that was important for people to see that. Again, the visual just kind of complements anything that you put in, in an email or anything you've just verbally said to somebody. So those things have been really helpful for me. It also contributed to that sense of this is what we do as a group. And it was important to reiterate with people that we are not just out there as individuals, we are part of a group, and our numbers are are measured by scale. So even if you had kind of a crummy day and you only talked to one person, or you had 3 people pick up the phone and they all hung up on you, somebody else had, 5 conversations or, 3 conversations. And when you look at the group as a whole, and we generally averaged about 8 or 9 people for every phone bank, we would have 45 contacts for that day. So that was really important for people to see as well. Okay. Thank you. All right. So kind of how did all of that come about in terms of, approaching people? I spoke to every single new registrant that came to me, either through Mobilize. It's kind of like what the Laura's did as well, is that we made an effort to make a personal contact with people. And the purpose of that was to introduce myself, to kind of wean out those folks who thought that they were joining a phone bank that might be calling for somebody in California or calling for a congressional office. So we could kind of say to them, then this is probably not the place for you, and just end it right there. There was just no more effort for that particular person. It also gave me a chance to tell them how our phone banks are structured, what our expectations were of them. And I do tell people that if you're joining our phone bank, the group relies on each other for us all to show up. So it's important that you show up on a regular basis, not once every 2 months or not until we get into the GOTV, but I expect people to show up at least twice a month. I know we all have lives and we need time with our families and take trips and that sort of thing, but this should be a priority for you. This should be your Wednesday afternoon activity. So I explained to them what our expectations are, how we go about communicating with people. And then if they are interested, I will do a one-on-one Zoom meeting with them when we actually have the phone banks open. So that gives me a chance to help people get into the phone bank, to look at how it's structured, to look at the drop-down menus, to kind of review the script and to navigate their way around the phone bank itself. It's changed over the years, so we've constantly had to learn new activities or new skills in working those phone banks. And then lastly, it is important, again, because we all need to be acknowledged and recognized as individuals, is to do appreciation efforts for our phone bankers. So we have virtual birthday parties. I bring a cupcake or cupcakes, depending on how many birthdays we have that month, light a candle, we all sing a song, they blow it out virtually, I blow it out in time, real time. I also send out a lot of emails acknowledging people's milestones, the first 500 calls they've made, the first, volunteers that they've been able to get, or yard signs. I do that individually with them, as well as to send out group emails so that everybody kind of has a chance to, get up to date on our numbers. And then at the end, we always have a get together after the election to celebrate our work. Whether our candidates have won or not, we still have value in the work that we do for Sister District. And people, you generally meet at my house and they bring food and we talk and we do kind of a wrap up and we, pat ourselves on the back and enjoy what we've done over the years. So that's what has worked for us. I don't think that I would change that particular structure for us because it's been pretty successful, but my problem is with recruiting. So thank you for, for some of the good ideas that you've shared. I appreciate that.
For this.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, I think we have some time for questions and we would love your guys' questions, but I'd like to kick it off. You two work very hard during the election cycles and especially around GOTV. How have you found success though, when it comes to deputizing your phone bankers into phone bank leaders?
Oh, well, you want me to go?
You can go first.
Okay. I can tell. How that's worked for us, well, first of all, after the first year, one of the volunteers said, you know, we really should try it. Maybe we would get more people calling with us if we offered a phone bank on the weekend. Good, Dave, would you like to do that? I think I could do that now. So he took that on. I did a lot of training with him. He and I now coordinate together, you know, how the phone banks are going during that week. And not only do people come who, you know, work on the weekends, but if folks can't come on the Wednesdays, they will often do the Saturday phone bank to kind of put in their phone bank for the week. So that's happened. The other thing that has happened, and actually I initiated it the first go around because the group made a decision that in the GOTV phase, those 3 days before the election, that we would do 3 days of 6 hours of phone banking, which meant we split it up into 2-hour sessions. And every single person was willing to host or co-host that with some, not supervision, but some support, you know, from Dave and I. And they have continued to do that every year. So that's, I'm now looking at a couple of them of possibly taking a few of the regular phone banks every once in a while, because Dave and I have lives as well. So it'd be nice to have somebody who felt comfortable to do that. So that has been also a product, I think, of the support and the training and just the comfort level that they have.
Well, sorry. I am a product of being recruited. So I had never phone banked in my life until August of 2021. And Laura Zupko was running the phone banks for Greater Chicago. And she and I are also friends, which is how I ended up just joining in August. And then after the new year, she reached out to me and she said, so what did you think about phone banking? What did you like about it? I said, well, I really feel like it gave me a sense of purpose. I had just recently retired and I was trying to figure out, you know, what I was going to do with this next phase of my life. And she said, well, would you like to co-lead with me next year? So that's how I ended up in that position. We try to, when we're on Zoom chat, we always try to encourage people to be successful. So someone could say, oh, I've had 12 calls in a row and no one's picked up, or I haven't spoken to one person today. And then we would respond, your week is next week. So Laura and I didn't split up and have two different days. We were both on the calls that we did all the time so that we could give that personal attention to people while they were in the middle of phone banking and they didn't get like bogged down and I don't know the answer to this. And so the other thing we started to do, which I think is a better answer to your question, is that Neil had encouraged people to direct message the phone bankers on the call. We didn't start that because we were still kind of building our cadence together, Laura and I together, as well as working with the phone bankers. We started that in like August and had tremendous success because the people we direct message in the phone bank session, they came back all the time. So that's, I think, going to be where we find our next group.
Amazing. Do we have any questions from the audience? We can take about 3.
Or 2.
Or 2.
Hi, I'm really glad to hear what you're doing. One of my questions is for phone bank, because I've done a lot of phone banking. I haven't led any, but my question is about technology. You said direct messaging. So the communication between the leader and the participant, I mean, I know you can do chat.
Well, that's actually what I meant. We would use Zoom chat to just, but to send it to one individual as opposed to the whole group.
I see. Right. Okay. I know that. So the other question is getting people involved. It's just interesting because we're now on Zoom chats. So when we started off doing election work. We were in phone banks in a build, in a place. But is there any thought being given to that possibility at some point to help familiarize people, since now, we're through, hopefully, well, we believe we're through the COVID situation, and that we could have, I don't know, that's just a thought, in person.
For Greater Chicago, Laura and I haven't really talked about it yet. We're going to start putting our minds together around it again in March and April. We have, like I said before, in the Greater Chicago, I could drive an hour to be where some of the people we participate with live. So we have to sort of balance out and do some kind of analysis on, do we get greater participation if we have it at one person's house? Or do we have greater participation if we had it on Zoom? Or do we do a hybrid? I mean, that's another thing we talked about, at the end of the election cycle. Do we have a hybrid? So I'm not sure given the scope of the size of the city and the breadth of where our phone bankers all live, we haven't nailed that down yet.
Yeah, no, I that's understandable. But I guess the question would also be, might there be, just to facilitate familiarity with the process, meaning there are a lot of older people. We have old people like me.
We don't have that. All of our people are working. I know that's something that Linda struggles with, but the Greater Chicago community,
yeah,
everybody's working. So for instance, if we did the half hour on one end and the half hour another end, we'd lose a lot of people, because sometimes they're driving home from work, calling in to hear the very first part of our call, which is always about what's new with our candidates or on the political front. And then they get home and they'll log on to the system. But we don't have that issue. In fact, sometimes the people who are the phone bankers jump on and help out if there's technical issues.
Yeah, our group made the decision that we wanted to stay with in the Zoom meeting, because again, all of them come from various parts of Sacramento County, and can be, 40 miles away. Originally, I think we had like 3 in-person meetings at the very beginning of 2020, because we actually started calling, because none of us knew what we were doing. We started calling for a couple of other organizations before we ever got candidates. So we called for Arizona and we called for Georgia. And when Zoom came on, it was just so much easier for us to all meet together. The other issue that I ran into when we did have those couple of in-person meetings was that if we were meeting at somebody's home, I could not find a room someplace where we could rent. Well, first of all, we didn't have any money for that, but we would meet in people's homes, and it became very cumbersome for people to bring their all of their equipment and find a room where they weren't distracted by other voices, and the Zoom was just much easier for us. The other thing is that I will do some training with people individually with the technology on a one-to-one basis if they're having difficulty.
Yeah,
We use the breakout rooms in the Zoom feature if people are really having a problem. We do about 25 minutes training for everyone who's new every time we kick off a call. And we not only go through, here are screenshots of what you're going to see, but we also take like 5 minutes to walk them through the actual Open VPB system. And then if people are having more trouble, we use the breakout room feature.
Right.
I will also say, Neil and I talked about this at length, and the best thing that came out of COVID was virtual phone banking. It makes it incredibly easy for introverts, someone that's very overwhelmed by everyone's voice, for them to get involved with phone banking.